Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, you might know through her appearances as a judge, or more popularly known as the Shark of Shark Tank India. Please give it up for Miss Vineeta Singh, who's an IITian and an IIMA graduate, who also happens to be the CEO and co-founder of Sugar Cosmetics. Join me in inviting Ms. Singh to deliver a keynote address on the resolute of building a consumer brand in Bharat. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. Oh, it's working. Wow. Great. Thank you so much for having me here while I was on my flight to Goa from Mumbai. I already knew that I'm going to the coolest event ever because I could hear all these ad folks discussing the after parties. 3 after parties is what I know is going to happen. I, of course, somebody, one of the organizers, gave me his chair, and then he said that, you are the Bharati, so you take the seat, please. So I think this event is quite cool, so I hope I get upgraded from Bharati to Gharwala next year. I am struggling to do a follow-up act after Sukhbir and Yami, who were fabulous, but I'm very relieved that I'm going before my friend Ankush. We are a part of the same investors portfolio, and he's the Sharma ji ka ladka there, because every time we talk about massive communities with millions of women, he comes and talks in billions and trillions. So I'm always relieved to go up before him. Thank you so much for that again. So if my presentation comes up, yes, I want to talk about the resilience of building a brand for Bharat. So we launched Sugar back in 2015, and right now, almost 60% of our revenue actually comes from more than 30,000 offline stores that we're available in. But 90% of our customers still continue to discover us online because we launched as this digital-first brand at a time where there weren't as many women shopping online. So back in 2015, less than 15% of the online shoppers were actually women, but we started seeing the transition happen. And we knew that this number is going to grow, and as on dates, it's about 43% of the online shoppers are women. So we didn't predict that we would, in 2022, be leading such a digital life, but here we are. The other thing that we realized at that time was that the largest legacy brands in India had these 2 big moats. Moat is a very VC question. I'm really sorry. We keep getting asked, moat kya hai? But, they really had the largest moats, which was these advertising budgets and distribution. So it just seemed impossible that somebody who's been raised only like 5-6 crore rupees would be able to come and disrupt an industry where there are the L'Oreals and the P&Gs and the Unilevers of the world already playing. But the interesting thing that happened in the last few years is that digital gave us a level playing field. So the entire distribution moat could get overcome by e-commerce, which gives you overnight distribution to thousands of PIN codes, and of course, advertising. So in the last year, we had more than 4 billion views on our content with the entire production, distribution, everything happening in-house. So for peanuts, a small company, just by creating the right content for her consumer, could get billions of views and could get the kind of reach, like in a typical ad campaign, you get about 40 to 50 million unique reach. In a month, we're able to get that on Instagram by spending peanuts there. So I think these 2 things were the unfair advantage that challenger brands had. And of course, COVID happened, and now women are spending more than 7 hours a day glued to their screen, which I'm sure Ankush will talk more about. But their inspiration has changed. And that was one of the big trends that we saw happening in 2015. But you know how change is, right? You see it happening very slowly, and then it happens all at once. So back in 2015, the numbers were very small. Most companies brands were doing less than 1-2% of their business digitally. And that's why younger women were one of the most neglected consumer for most large brands. They were very focused on the Lalita Ji, GT consumer. And then suddenly we start seeing that younger women are thinking very differently. They're not getting inspired by celebrities, no offense, Yami. They're looking at other real women on social media who look like them. They have the same flaws, they have the same skin issues, they have deeper skin tones to figure out their inspiration for what kind of products they want to wear. They're spending time digitally to really learn. So the entire education on which makeup industry was based, because makeup is one of those categories where in India we're still at about 1/8 of the per capita consumption of any of the international markets. Now, makeup is a category which is based on education because you have to learn in a fun way how to wear makeup before you can actually buy a contouring palette or even an eyeliner that can give you wings. And now that entire education, there was this opportunity to move that digitally. But most brands continue to deliver this education experience in stores. And that's where we saw the opportunity to engage and educate our consumers in a fun way. And that's how our entire marketing strategy was devised. Now, so there were 3 things that I think we did to survive and get where we are. And we're currently able to ship more than 10 million products a month. So we've come a long way in the last 5 to 6 years. It starts with communication being consistent and earning the trust of a consumer, which takes decades. So we, as a brand, are not in a rush. We don't get pressured by sales targets to say that, okay, can we be the deepest discounted brand? Because unfortunately, while performance marketing made it easy for all of us to measure everything that we were doing, it also made a lot of us spend a lot of our budget on things which I often call shortcuts, which is discounts and just paid ads to win sales, because those ads are getting you sale at the cost of channel parity. And I do feel, I don't know about the 4 Ps, but we do feel that price consistency and the consumer not having a doubt whether she should optimize by buying it on Amazon versus lifestyle versus general trade, that kind of distrust takes away from her experience of loving a brand. So these are some of the things, and I'm not going to joke here. In the last 2 years, there are 4,000 plus vitamin C serums, for instance, that have launched on Amazon. Our philosophy is that we're building a brand for the next 2 decades, so we do not want to get tempted to be the 300-something discounted brand on a marketplace that's just trying to increase sales by being the trend of the season. So we obsess about our product experience. So starting with packaging, which we think the design is a language that speaks before the words can come. And that's why we obsess about creating content that's both thumb-stopping on Instagram and digitally, but also looks great in stores. Because we feel that consistency in the design, in the messaging, looking great, having distinctive assets, is a great part of the brand building experience. And I, again, keep talking about long term, because every single time we have to make a decision on what to price, what our campaign should be, we obsess about what is going to be right by our consumer over the next 2 decades. Our consumer is a young woman, and she wants authenticity. She wants real women talking about real products and how they're going to look on women with the deepest and warmest of skin tones. And that's the kind of heroes that we have on our communication. And then, of course, having the absolutely right product, because over a period we've realized that you can have, like traditional FMCG brands thought that if you have a product is a commodity and brand comes from marketing. We've turned it on its head and said, if you have a fabulous product, you can save your marketing cost, because the product on its own goes viral, because you get hundreds of thousands of reviews on e-commerce portals and social media. Similarly, great content goes viral on its own. So we believe in just finding the right content that suits our consumer. So if you go to our Instagram page, 2.1 million followers, you will not find a single post that talks about a sale or where a product is available. It'll always talk about what the consumer wants to learn, that is education in an entertaining way. That's our ethos of the community that we're building. And then, of course, the second reason why we've survived so far has been the team. I feel that, that's the one superpower that Sugar has, that our team very closely mirrors the ambition and the aspiration of the 25-year-old Bharat girl who's very different from her mom in terms of saying, I'm going to be independent, I know what I want from life and from things, and I will take charge of my own destiny. That shift has started happening in the last decade, and now you're seeing these brands that serve these young women who are part of Bharat, brands made by Bharat for these women. You're seeing these brands emerge now, but the shift started happening over a decade ago. And what we realized is that you put all of these women in a room and let them create, innovate, create content, do everything in-house, and automatically you have innovation happening. So the passion that they bring to something which they feel strongly about, and when you have a company that has more than 2,000 women, the culture is very supportive of women. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Our entire culture works around ensuring that it's a great place to work for young women. And it is, sometimes I feel that this probably is my karma, but more than that, it is a business decision, because as a CEO, my only job is to empower them and let them go rule the world, as we say, one look at a time. And then, of course, last 2 years, people talk about lipstick effect hair, where people in a meltdown are going to be buying more lipstick, or is it the other way around where people are sitting at home wearing masks, so there's going to be no lipsticks? Well, we grew over the last 2 years, and it was the time when both the major for rank 1 and rank 2 brands, we are now rank 3 in makeup as a category in India, the rank 1 and rank 2 brands slashed their prices, and there was so much pressure on every single player out there to really discount and get rid of inventory. And that's the time that we thought that this is when our fundamentals are being put to test, and that's why we have to again remember what matters for the next 2 decades, because the consumer remembers. The consumer remembers how you treat your employees, remember. So we had more than 2,000 store staff. We redeployed them to create content for us on all our digital platforms, TikTok before it got banned, Instagram, and they started educating the consumers in their networks and started building. They became like our content heroes. And a lot of that content started going viral. So we were at about 260,000 followers pre-pandemic, and we got out of it with 2.1 million followers. So I feel that that was an opportunity to, again, focus on the long term rather than saying, can I multiply my revenue 4 times in these 2 years, versus can I do what's right by the consumer? The consumer is spending now more than 8 hours a day on her phone because she's locked down. How do I entertain her? How do I educate her? How do I engage more with her? And that's the thing that the brand obsessed with. And I feel that, that hard work resulted in us growing our market share from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic by almost 6%, which is a lot in the kind of category that ours, where it's not, the category itself is not growing as fast. So yeah, that's, the final, like I always say, I think Anupriya mentioned that the next decade belongs to India. I feel that, yes, the next decade belongs to India, but it also belongs to brands which are made in Bharat for Bharat. And I do feel that it's always going to be, every now and then, crazy stuff happens in the journey. Pandemic comes around, lipstick sales drop. There are, freak situations happen where somebody gets very deeply funded and starts deep discounting. It's a journey where people only talk about the glorious stuff, unicorns, 100 unicorns in India, and like the pressure is always there. But we keep asking ourselves just these 2 questions. What's going to matter to our consumer in the next 2 decades? Forget this 1-2 years FOMO. What's going to matter in the next 2 decades, and what's going to matter for the brand in the next 2 decades and just obsess with that. It helps that I'm a marathoner and my only strength is, and that the strength of our brand is resilience. So we are here for the next 2 decades, doesn't matter what happens. I do believe that in short term things go up and down, but the next 2 decades will belong to brands that come out of Bharat. So thank you, and of course, they said Q&A, and I know it's all going to be Shark Tank questions, so I thought let me at least talk about the business before that. Open to questions?
Yes. Thank you so much, Vineeta. And for questions, please may I invite Mr. Rohan Mehta, Director, 3As of I, CEO, Connect Private Limited, to lead the question-answer session. Also, everyone, please note, we have a whopping check of rupees 25,000 for the best question. So be quick and smart to stand a chance to win the best question prize. So bring it on, everyone. Also,
how drunk are they that they need to be bribed for questions?
It's not a bribe. It's just for coming up with the best question possible. There are plenty of questions which have come in, and the tablet has the questions there.
Okay. Thanks so much for that session, Vineeta. That was great. And resilience is something that has to stay around, especially at times like these, but in the changing times over the next 10 years also. All right, few questions from the crowd. The first one is, how difficult is it for new and small brands to target Bharat versus large established brands? How can they get equal playing ground?
I think it's definitely the easiest it has been in the last 2 decades. And there is every single day there are new platforms that allow you to be more mindful. I remember, the common investor that we have with Ankush. So before we launched Sugar, for 2 years, we had another e-commerce company, and we used to keep debating, should we launch our own brand? Because we believe these brands don't get young women. And the answer was always, nahi yaar, apna brand launch karne mein 50 crore minimum lagta hai. How much do you have in your bank account? 30 lakhs. Not possible, right? So we kept thinking that 50 crores is that threshold. But today, and some of you have seen Shark Tank because I met a lot of viewers, there are so many brands that are starting with as low as 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, because the important thing to remember is that it is now a lot easier than ever to launch a brand, but it is also now harder than ever to really build a brand. And there's a difference. You can launch it, but if you are, again, the 392nd ranked vitamin C serum on Amazon with the same packaging, the same ingredients, and the same story, I'm sorry, you're going to be dead on arrival. But if you found some pain point of your consumer where nobody's catering, and the good thing about Bharat is the 130 crore people, right? So everybody can find something that there is a market for. As long as you've identified that, you're true to that, you're honest to that, I do feel that you can create, and there is a level playing field because of the amazing platforms you have. By the way, we do a lot of work with Moj and ShareChat, and they are fabulous to reach Bharat at very efficient rates. You can send me my bottle of champagne later. Ankush, he's not here.
Thanks for that. And I have to personally thank you because you're making my job much easier to sell digital and how do you use digital in the best way. Coming to the next question, e-com is a huge part of our lives, but all online brands aspire to go offline to physical stores. Yeah. What should online brands be wary of while moving offline finally?
So I think the decision to move offline has worked out very well for us. In India, offline still brings more trust than showing up on an Amazon does. And secondly, we are already trying to change one type of consumer behavior by making them try a new brand, right? So that's one level of consumer dissonance of doing something new. You don't want to change where they buy also and force her to buy you online, because there will always be consumers, and even for a category like ours, which has one of the deepest penetration of e-commerce, it's still about 85% offline. So as a young brand, you don't want to change too many things because that adds to the resistance the consumer has. So for us, it's worked out very well to be available wherever she shops, where the discovery will still happen digitally or on social media, but the consumption will happen wherever it's easiest for her. So she's just making one big decision, which is away from the normal, which is switching from a legacy brand to a new brand. Having said that, again, in offline, it's important to not do me too. You know, everybody starts with, okay, what is my competitor doing? Let me show up there. If you show up at the same places as your competitor, it's going to be a lot more expensive because retailers work fundamentally on the premise that the large brands will give them very little margin. So they have to make their entire profits from the smaller guys, right? So the earlier you get into retail, the more the margin pressure on the smaller guys. So getting the timing right, very honestly, Sugar loves GT because, you know, GT is where we make all our money to fund everything from e-commerce to modern trade. But it's important to get the channel that works well for your consumer and where you'll not end up with obnoxious margins because changing margins later on in your journey become harder. So I hope I've answered the question.
Fabulous, yeah. And to your surprise, even the last question is not about Shark Tank. So they've stayed to the topic. All right, so the last question is, digital penetration in rural India is only 33%. How do we reach out to the remaining 66% who don't have access to the internet?
So very honestly, I'm still, we still have a primarily urban market. So rural is one of those things that we've really not solved for because, we use platforms. Probably platforms like ShareChat, Merge would be able to help with that. For us, I think the most efficient way has been to go not rural, but at least semi-urban and tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 has been retail. So, and retail there is a lot more efficient as well because, they don't have access to the larger brands and the bigger luxury brands will never be able to afford to be present there. So for them to have a brand which is affordable but is still more international in its vibe is a huge aspiration, right? So they are still people who are sending people to cities to bring them stuff. So I do feel that eventually Amazon would be delivering to all PIN codes, but GT and setting up retail presence is one of the better ways. For advertisers, I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that question apart from, of course, partnering with these
Or
guys.
you just wait for them to come online in a few years.
They will. I'm sure they will, yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Vineeta.
Okay, super nice. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well,
I think we all have a lot to take away from this.
well.